I'm from the Tennessee division. Been in SCV for about 3 years now. Well, going on 3 years. And thanks for having me. It's been great doing a quick tour around Athens. I do have some family history here. I have one gentleman in my line that read law under Governor Houston, so it's good to look at his couch that he read law on, right? But anyways, a little bit about me. I've been in currency coin collecting probably a good 25 years, more on the federal side. Since I came into the Sons of Confederate Veterans, I started studying more on the Confederate currency, state notes, obsolete notes. I'm sorry I don't have anything from Alabama here, but that's on my list of things to do. It's a lot to study. Yeah, let's go ahead and get into the presentation here. Now, what this presentation is designed as is an introduction to Antebellum money of the South. Basically anything that our ancestors in the South were using prior to the end of the war. It might be paper, it might be coin, it could be a lot of different things, and we're going to go over that. What we're gonna do is break this down into about 3 different parts. One is I'll do this PowerPoint slide here. It's a few slides. It'll be about 10 minutes or so. If you have questions during the presentation, I highly encourage you to jot it down, because then you can ask me in the second part of the presentation, which is your question and answer period. Feel free to ask me those questions. I am a member of the American Numismatic Association. I have bought and sold coins and currency on the side for a long time. So if you have questions about that, and I'll give you some contact information at the end of the presentation. But and the third part of the presentation will be just y'all going around the table. Y'all can look at it, inspect it, ask me questions. All these coins tie into the presentation, so there's a method to the madness. So what we're going to go over in the presentation is a gold rush in the South, and also how New Orleans becomes an economic powerhouse right around 1840, 1850. The economic engine of the South through New Orleans is getting going. There's a variety of money in the antebellum South. We'll go over who was issuing money, why they were issuing money, what was being issued as money, what did money look like. We'll have examples of all of those from the presentation. Also, we'll talk about metal scarcity during the war and how our ancestors were starting to get resourceful and trying to make trade happen and trying to survive day to day. And then finally, we'll talk about how the value of Confederate currency declined during the war due to inflation and how that actually benefits us today. It's like a silver line in the cloud type situation. But for the first point, gold rush in the South. When I say gold rush, most people think about San Francisco, 1849. All the settlers going out west because they heard there was gold, Sutter's Mill, etc. Well, the first gold rush in the United States was actually in North Carolina in 1799. Now, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to put y'all on the spot a little bit, and I'm guilty too. How many used to go to Sunday school when you were young, right? Sunday school? How many skipped Sunday school? Said you went. Yeah, I know. I did too. It happened. Well, that's what 12-year-old Conrad Reed did in 1799. He decided he was going to go fishing, and he found this rock, I guess, in the course of his adventures that day, and it was a cool-looking, yellow-looking rockish thing, and gave it to his dad, and he's like, yeah, we're just going to use that as a doorstop. So it was used for doorstop for several years, and then finally they got a visitor to the family home there and said, I think you have something there. You ought to take this to the guy in town and have them flex this for you. So the technician did, fluxed out a good little bar of gold, and word got out, there's your gold rush. Now, when you look at the western North Carolina, similar instances happen in 1829 in northeastern Georgia in the Dahlonega area. You also have gold found in northeastern Alabama, the Gadsden, that area. And then you have the United States Mint since 1792 was striking coins at Philadelphia Mint. And they're transporting all this gold up there, and finally it dawns on the Mint after a while, well, we should just strike that in the South so that way we don't have to ship it up there and travel, etc. So the United States Mint did construct some branch mints at New Orleans, at Charlotte, and at Dahlonega. That branch mint gold, whether it was Charlotte or Dahlonega, New Orleans, found heavy use in the South. It was circulated, and most examples you'll find today, I have two examples of some Southern branch mint gold on the table, but you'll find that it's circulated, and you're very rarely going to find that in an uncirculated condition, and if you do, you're in some big bucks. It's just a pleasure just to hold them. So fast forward to 1840, you have New Orleans, which is becoming, like I said, an economic powerhouse. And by that time, it's the third largest city in the United States. There's a lot of import-export going on, whether it's cotton, sugar cane, corn, and you have all the ethnic diversity as well, you know, the French, the Spanish, and everybody else. So there's a lot of good ethnic diversity, and that would be used by the Confederacy when you fast forward to the war. That's why you find a lot of different nationalities fighting in the war. But that was typical of New Orleans in that period of time. And that's important when we're talking about the money. Yeah. All right. So when you start rolling into the 1850s, there's the push to do commerce, and sometimes the metal and the coins, they don't circulate the way that they should in that particular area. So several different things were happening. One, states and the local banks started printing paper money. These states in the South were printing paper money before the federal government ever printed national currency. So you have that. You have the fact that a lot of foreign currency was actually still legal tender at the time. An example would be the pillar dollar from Spain, or the 8 reales, where the dollar supposedly comes from. That's an example of our ancestors trying to barter and trying to spend money, make it work. You also have the variety of denominations in federal coinage at that time. You have half cents, you have full cents. Now, the half cent back then was probably about the size of the quarter, then you're getting up to about the large cent, which is about the size of a $50. You have the 2 cent piece that would come out in 1864, but in the 1850s, you would have the half dime, you would have the dime, you would have, back then in the 1850s, you would have one kind of 3 cent piece, which was silver. They would call them trimes. You may have heard that phrase, trime. And that's the smallest coin that the United States ever struck. There were half dimes, dimes. Back in the 1800s, you even had double dimes, the 20 cent piece, but that would come after the war. Then you had your quarter and your half dollar that you're familiar with. And then you would have the dollar coin. And there were 2 kinds of dollar coins. You had a silver dollar and you had a gold dollar. And we have them both here. You had the $2.50 gold piece. And you're thinking, well, gosh, why would there be a $2.50 gold piece? That doesn't make any sense. Well, when you look at the basic unit of what federal coinage was based off of when the mint started in 1790s, it was based off the $10 gold piece, which was the eagle, and it was made of gold. It was about roughly a half ounce, 0.38, 4839 ounces of gold, and then you wanted to do proportional weights to it. So you would have a $5 gold piece, which they called the half eagle. That would be exactly half the weight of the $10. And then you would have a $2.50 gold piece is exactly the half of the weight of the 5, which is half the weight of the 10. and it went all the way up to the $20 gold piece, which is almost 1 ounce of gold, and we got one of those on the table, just so you can see comparative sizes of weights and how the weights were important. You even had our ancestors clipping money. You may or may not be familiar with that. Good case in point, I was asked by my grandfather a few months ago, hey, can you go through a box of coins that I have from my father and my grandfather? I said, sure. And I came across an 1866 seated Liberty dime, and it's small, and you can see where it's clipped, about 1 cent worth out of silver clipped out of that coin. So they were resourceful. The obsolete notes, the local banks, they were supplying money. For example, here in Athens, you had the Bank of Athens. That was probably the biggest one back then. The local populace had faith in that bank to make sure that if we're doing $1 gold, okay, well, if I can't get $1 gold piece, here's a piece of dollar local money. And I have example of some local bank issued money as well. Don't have any state issued money, but I have the Confederate today and the charter, or what we call charter banks, but the local obsolete notes that were from the local banks. When the war rolls around, you read about how there was metal scarcity. There was hoarding going on. And it was all over the United States and the Confederate States both. And how both dealt with it was a little bit different. It was easier and more common in the Northeast United States, for example, to issue what are now known as Civil War tokens. And they would be issued by a business. And it'd be struck maybe similar portion of metal, something of value. It would have advertisement probably on the back if it was at a store, maybe it was for a commodity. But in the South, it wasn't like that. It was more strictly barter. Reason for that is you had during the war, you have coin presses leaving the South, so that made it difficult, first of all, to make something like a Civil War token. You also have the debasement of the metallic composition of these. For example, remember earlier when I was telling you that the large cent was about the size of a $50, and it's about it's close to 90% copper. So it's a lot of copper, large cent. Well, by the time 1864 rolls around, it's a small cent, and it's made of bronze, and not the predominantly copper, or even copper nickel. There's copper nickel from 1859 to 1864, and finally the hoarding and the metal values got so bad in 64, the feds changed that metallic composition to bronze for their penny. You also have, I have two different kinds of 3-cent pieces on the table. One is copper nickel, and then you have the one that was silver prior to 1866. Well, the silver ones ran through about 1973, but they really stopped making so much of them right at the end of the war. And they were going out to this 3-cent nickel variety. And that's because, well, silver was getting expensive during the war, so they made a cheaper metal, and it was a little larger size, but it served the purpose nonetheless. The inflation, as you may have read in your studies, got pretty rampant. When you get to the Confederate dollar at the start of the war, it was used as fiat currency. It was a debt financing instrument, and it was a bartering instrument, both. And at the beginning of the war, you had the Confederate States dollar being about 1.11 Confederate dollars to the dollar. Well, by the time 1864 rolls around, it's 33.33 to the dollar, which is about 3% of its original value, if I did the math on that right. Yeah, I think I did that right. It's either 3% or 6%, I forget which, but it's a very low percentage. And I've got some examples of Confederate notes here. So 1864 rolls around, and they're printing millions and millions and millions of these Confederate notes. And there's anecdotal stories where there will be, the Union going by, and they've got their wagon. It's loaded full of Confederate money that they've captured, and they're throwing it out the back of the wagon because it's pretty much useless at that point, close to it. Well, that's a boon for collectors today because they printed so many of them, and so many of our ancestors collected it after that wagon went through, or whatever the scenario was. They collected it, and now survives. So if you want genuine pieces of Confederate currency, it's not very difficult to find, and it's relatively inexpensive because the supply is high. Maybe demand isn't as high as it should. You would think it would be a higher demand for it, but the supply of it is definitely high for several varieties of it. People also like to collect Confederate contemporary counterfeits. The counterfeits that were printed at the time, they look right on. It's old paper, so people will collect that. They have an artistic value, and it is old, so people will like to. I've heard of people hanging them, framing them, hanging them, and some Confederate dealers do carry Confederate contemporary notes. Well, again. I'm a member of the American Numismatic Association. Here's my email, DerrickTGlover1@hotmail.com. I don't have any cards on me, I apologize. But if you ever want a free appraisal of United States coin and currency, Confederate as well, I've dealt with it enough to where I'm pretty good on the Confederate values as well. But again, I'm a lot stronger on the federal part of it. If you're on Facebook, I can be messaged at Derrick Thomas Glover. You can send me a Facebook message that way too. If you have questions about anything think you came across something, or maybe you're a metal detector and you're not sure what you came across, I do those consultations all the time. With that, I'll go ahead and take any questions that you have. Young man.
So whenever they start flipping off all the coins, is that the reason why the United States started to make coins of bronze so they can be prevented from having more clippings on it?
I didn't understand your question, I'm sorry. The last part of it.
I was asking that whenever they first made the coins, when they started clipping off them, is that the reason why the United States made the coins with ridges so people couldn't clip them off them anymore?
Okay, there's two things there. One, in the period of 1830s and earlier, it was common to try to file off the coin. I wouldn't say the clipping part of it when you're talking prior to 1840. It was more of a filing thing. They would do the metal shavings and whatever, as opposed to clipping. I mean, they would clip to make change, but the concern about filing it down to where it's less notable. A lot of the quarters, for example, the quarter dollar, prior to 1839, was actually a solid edge. For counterfeiting, they would do stamped on the edge of the coin what it was. That was an anti-counterfeit measure, but the filing of the edges became an integrity issue with the weight of the coin. So to address that, they made reeds. They reeded the edge, and I believe it was 1839 they started doing it on the half dollar. But as far as the clipping goes, the metallic composition was always going to be what it was going to be, mostly based off of economic conditions. The clipping was just a way to conduct the business, and it really never had. I never saw in any of the United States Mint designs that was ever discouraged for the clipping part of it, but I could be wrong. Yes, sir. In the back.
I had a question on the local banknotes. It seems to me that it would be really hard for those to be secure or easily faked and that kind of thing. Was that an ongoing issue?
They were counterfeited, sure. They were our ancestors may do, and that's what they did. I'm sure that there are probably contemporary counterfeits of those notes out there. It's just not an area that I've studied. I would figure it may have been a problem at the time. I mean, it was certainly a problem with Confederate notes, so I don't know why it wouldn't be for the obsolete notes. As to how they addressed that, I'm not sure.
Anybody else? John?
What would an 1856 half dime be worth?
Well, it depends on its condition and where it was struck. So what I'm going to do, I told you I was a dealer on the side. I'm going to pull up the gray sheet here, and I'll actually get you an answer to that.
Well, I've got one. It came from an old trunk in Linville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
My grandfather's trunk.
Nice.
Got more and more knowing you. No, Jerry got the rest of them.
Oh, okay. Understandable.
He had two $20 gold pieces, and I don't know who got them. I didn't get them.
Well, you know who knows.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble pulling up internet here.
If you're not on the Wi-Fi, you're not getting any phone signal here.
No, they had one up the jack.
What's the Wi-Fi?
If the Wi-Fi is made difficult, you can use cellular data.
Well, it's not letting me. All right, so on the Wi-Fi, it pretty much dampens your data signal.
This whole middle building did.
Yeah. So.
I never heard of a half dime till I found it.
Okay, I'm gonna click
Never
that.
heard of a half
When did you
dime.
find this?
1973. We were cleaning out the house, the carriage house.
Oh,
The carriage house. And I lifted to see what was in it, and the coin fell out. And I picked it up, I said, a half dime? What is that?
Type it in, yeah. My fingers are so fat with these things.
Finder's keeper sake. Jerry had been there, and he'd have found it, he'd have kept it. Jim would have.
All right, I think I have a connection now, so let me go ahead and take a
Say,
look.
John, it's worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $60. I'll give you $100.
I was kidding. It's in good shape. I don't know, I guess it'd been in that trunk so long.
Well, I'd find it, once he gets up here, there's a part of this, sometimes old money like that, you will have one particular date that they made 5 million of it. Then you got other dates where they only made a couple thousand. And obviously those ones with a couple of thousand are worth a whole lot more.
I have an 1871 nickel with it, it's very low mintage.
The 56 and the 50, as far as the whole series goes, is somewhat common in that. It can go anywhere depending on condition. Anywhere from a dealer might offer you somewhere between $18 and $9,300, depending on condition and which one it is.
I like that 9,300.
Yeah, so do I. Right?
John, I'll give
But on those, those are the higher grades. Higher grades, you always want to get them certified because the difference between, on some things, like the difference between a MS-64 and an MS-65 is astronomical, and the technical difference between the two are very minuscule. Yes, sir.
How about, the Stone Mountain $50 commemorative?
Yeah.
Is it now, do we want to just melt it versus value?
All right, well, you got to ask yourself, okay, why do I own a coin? It depends on what your goal of it is. I mean, if it's something to pass down, that's kind of cool. I mean, it has, I want to say maybe $30 or $35 worth of silver in it. If it's something you want to pass down or donate it to a museum or whatever. Now you're going to get more than $30 from a dealer on that. You might get $40 or $50, depending on the condition of it. Some of the brilliant uncirculated ones. I won one at auction one time. It was a Mint State 66 plus. Or it was an MS-66 CAC approved, I believe. That was auctioned off in Charleston, won by somebody, then they donated it to the National Confederate Museum, so you can actually see that coin. The gift shop actually was selling Stone Mountain $50 for a while. There was a gentleman or somebody had donated some, We've sold through all those at the gift shop, so there are no more for sale there at this time. But I encourage people to have them, pass them on. It's good for a pocket piece. It's good for those sort of things, and they're relatively still affordable to this day. So that's my 2 cents on that. Pardon the pun. Anybody else?
More questions? All right.
Well,
Thank you, Derrick.
if y'all want to go ahead and take a look around, I'll stick around for some questions. Look around at the coins. I'm sure you'll have questions, and I'll just go ahead and
We'll do that in a few minutes. I have